So working group 2 is focusing on developing holistic MHPSS approaches, collaboration, coordination between movement components, and also thinking about how to collaborate with other actors. We have been meeting every month, and as you'll probably also see in the presentation, we are focusing in on 6 different contexts, and I'll get back to that. So given that we are focusing on how to strengthen collaboration in the 6 contexts, the sort of participation has been limited in that sense, but more on that later. We did recently, to end the year, we did a small survey in the group, and we just thought or maybe I should say again, for those who are new on the call, that I'm co-chairing this working group with Douglas from the ICRC and being supported by Christine from ICRC. And we couldn't have done this without Christine, because she's been extremely important in the implementation and facilitation of the groups. But from the survey that we did to sort of wrap up the year, the quotes that we got are now on your screen, saying that this is a great opportunity to share experiences of how the different movement or organizations work, but also allowing for group work between the different contexts. It's given motivation and inspiration to explore more opportunities, and it's been sort of a starting point to implement some of the points of the policy and the roadmap. Then of course we've only met online, given the various contexts, but also given the COVID situation. Physical meetings would probably improve the engagement. We asked about what the members in the group would recommend in future. So also having a bit more feasible or tangible goals, working on concrete activities, finding new solutions for how to do collaboration and coordination amongst the movement components, focusing more on putting a plan in place for how to mainstream across all sectors, and then maybe meet on a less frequently basis, because there are so many other meetings that we are attending. The objectives of working group 2, back to the beginning, was to identify and showcase 6 priority contexts. And these were selected based on where a number of movement components were involved in projects. So the context selected was Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Ukraine, and then we had 2 different COVID, one for a peer-to-peer support approach and one focusing in on Colombia with multiple movement components implementing COVID responses. And we looked at how the different movement components are providing MHPSS services across the different layers of the pyramid. The second objective was for all the movement actors to assess needs, refer and advocate in relation to the full spectrum of the movement's MHPSS framework, as much as the mandate and the political situation in country allows for. And then we had the objective of strengthening integration of MHPSS across different sectors, thinking that would allow for movement components and actors to reach more people and foster provision of appropriate services through information sensitization sessions, community trainings, or direct support or referrals within the framework. This has, of course, goes without saying, this is not only what we're working towards year 1, this is for all the roadmap implementation years. So we are still on this. But by the end of 2021, our aim was to have the 6 contexts identified, and they were. And then by end of 2022, we we are expecting that the working group members are better supported to coordinate, and that we are having thematic meetings for each of the contexts. And then we have 2 indicators that are to be delivered by 2023. This is just to give an example from Iraq, where you can see the different movement components implementing activities on the various layers within the pyramid. So this project is still ongoing. And just to say that DRC is supporting IRCS in some of the more basic and focused activities. And this is delivered in collaboration and coordination with what the ICRC is supporting of more psychological and specialized services. This is the example from Syria, where we've done the same, from Yemen, from Ukraine. So it's just to give you a brief overview of the 4 country contexts. And I will be happy to share if you want to see the detailed levels of interventions. Yeah, there's a yes, please, from here in the room. So I will be happy to share on email. Then for the COVID peer-to-peer, it was between Bolivia and Argentina, with referral pathways to the National Health Services and mental health specialized organizations or actors in place. And I do believe that this example was actually also shared in the working group 3, right? No. No. Yeah, but I thought they had, okay. I thought they did a presentation. Okay. Because it was to strengthen the mental well-being between the frontline workers throughout their response in COVID, and how to set up a peer-to-peer initiative between 2 different national societies. The other COVID example is from Colombia, with a collaboration between Colombia Red Cross and the ICRC, providing support to sort of a mini helpers, or more psychologist focused interventions and referrals again. So we've had technical coordination meetings. We have the 6 contexts. We've presented and tried to sort of break down the framework in the context. We've looked at lessons learned, challenges, and had that sort of broken into 2 different sessions within the working group, where we've discussed on both specific context, but also on more of the thematic challenges that we've identified, and use that for inspiration and opportunities for what we're going to look at in 2022. The challenges of this, of course, has both to do with the context that were selected, not really creating a lot of interest for non-selected contexts. Also meaning that representation of national societies and regions have to do with the context that were selected. We've only had 1 meeting, so that only allows for people who are in the same time zones to attend. And we've also faced some challenges with languages when it comes to, for example, Spanish representation in the group. So when we had the Colombia and the Bolivian, Argentinian examples, we did use existing resources within the group to translate throughout the session. But if we hadn't had that, it wouldn't have been possible. We faced some turnover of focal points and staff and volunteers who have participated in the group, and then the COVID context. And we are now going, because we're not continuing with the COVID context, we are looking into seeing if we can substitute those 2 contexts with more operational context, which we would then have to identify, and that's a whole other story. Yeah. How much more time do I have, Natalie? None.
You can get 2 minutes. Ask me.
Okay.
I'm the generous one.
Well, when it comes to collaboration for national societies or and IFRC and ICRC, there is the whole all the challenges that are linked to movement collaboration, like lack of joint assessment, field competition, and when we also talk resource mobilization, that we are in competition with one another. And so that sometimes also create a bit of lack of transparency. That we are operationalizing the methodologies or approaches in a different way, because we're different movement components with different mandates. We do not have a joint supervision system, meaning that depending on which national society, there are different supervision possibilities, there are different levels of engagement. We are faced with lack of referral pathways or lack of access to mapping of services. The tools used are different. Sometimes they're not updated or they are outdated. Yeah. Just to highlight a few, we luckily also identified a lot of best practices, and these are going to lead us into 2022. So for 2022, we're going to work a lot more together as a working group on developing more concrete recommendation and guidelines or alignments, checklists. We haven't defined it yet, but how can we come together to better collaborate on MHPSS, provide some common guidelines and or technical guidance. We would like to have forums established for the respective contexts where they can meet regularly on a neutral ground. We're also thinking about having a few thematic meetings that are open to more, to kind of engage on more broader level, focusing on selected activities or topics, but not country specific. We also are considering the possibility of involving external actors to share their experiences on collaboration on MHPSS, to be inspired in the movement on what has been happening in other working groups, for example. And then maybe to reach out to movement managers and actually facilitate a meeting for them on where we present the recommendations and guidelines, but also to get their feedback and ideas for strengthening movement collaboration on an institutional level.